everyone, and welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I am your host, Lorelei. Today's case is another one that is current and in the news at the moment. In fact, a press conference was just held on March 10th of 2025, and new updates were just announced last week. Nikki McCain has been missing since May of 2024, and there hadn't been much media coverage of the case at all, and the little that there was had died down over the months since Nikki has been missing. So, her sister stated that the press conference was a call of action to find their sister. They wanted everyone to know the case was still ongoing and active, and that their sister was still missing, and that they wanted to bring her home, especially for her 4 beautiful children. Nikki's husband, Tyler McCain, also spoke at the press conference, and it was awkward as fuck. Apparently, he has been hiding in the background for the last 10 months that Nikki's been missing. He has done no interviews, has not participated in any searches at all. I will post the press conference coverage on the Victim's Voice Facebook page so you can hear all of it for yourself. But when I say red flags are flying, they are definitely flying high. And the press conference is even more telling if you listen to it after listening to this episode. When the chief of police handed Tyler the microphone, he looked nervous as hell. He said, after every word, barely spoke loud enough for anyone to hear, then stood there and said, I don't know what to say. How about describe your wife, talk about the last time she was seen and where, and beg and plead for her safe return. He had no sense of urgency and looked like he wanted to run off of that stage, which he did. After he got done with whatever the hell he was trying to say, he took off from the stage and wasn't seen again. Nikki's 2 sisters spoke next, and they said everything that Tyler should have. So let's go over who Nikki and Tyler were, how their relationship began, and where Nikki's last known whereabouts were. Nikki Chang Sali was born on November 9th of 1984. She was born in Thailand while her parents were in a refugee camp after the Vietnam War. And she's from the Minh descent, an indigenous group originating from Southeast Asia. She was the second oldest out of 7 children. Her parents had 4 children while in the refugee camp, which included Kay, Nikki, and May, and Chloe. After coming to the U.S., the family settled in the Seattle area to start a new life, where her parents had 3 more children. They eventually settled in Redding, California, which is in Shasta County, where there is a notable Minh community, and the family connected with other relatives. Most of their cousins were boys, so the Sali sisters were very close throughout childhood and into adulthood. They always stood by each other's sides through thick and thin. Her family describes Nikki as fun, goofy, and bubbly. She would be your biggest cheerleader and always had a positive attitude. They said she's the kind of person that sought to find the good in everyone, even the worst kind of person. She was always willing to give people another chance if they screwed up or did something wrong. This kind of spirit could be part of what led to Nikki's disappearance. When Nikki was in her 20s, she worked at the Wind River Casino as a cocktail waitress, which is where she met Tyler McCain, who worked in the slots department. Tyler wasn't Mr. Perfect by no means. He had previous run-ins with the law, including vandalism and burglary charges. Tyler was flirtatious and charming, but also seemed to have a shy side, which is what attracted Nikki to him. Tyler's family is very prominent in the Redding Rancheria tribe, a federally recognized Native American reservation near Redding. His mother, Jeanette Hayward, is a member and lives on Redding Rancheria Road near the Wind River Casino. It was Tyler's grandfather, who was a tribe elder, that helped start the casino in 1993, and he was the manager until he retired in 2002. Tyler and Nikki dated, then eventually got married in 2010, and they had 4 children together. They lived in a home on 3.5 acres that was near the Rancheria Reservation in an area called Happy Valley. Before the pandemic in early 2020, Nikki was a stay-at-home mom and Tyler was a spa manager. But because of the pandemic, he lost his job. And like everyone else, they were both at home together 24/7. This is when the abuse allegedly started, or at least got notably worse. During the time that they were in their home together, Tyler spent a lot of time in the garage, which is where his sister was living. She had a history of substance abuse, and Nikki had a feeling that Tyler had also begun abusing substances. Nikki would beg Tyler to come into the house to spend time with her and the kids, but that would just piss him off. The police were called by the neighbors many times because of Tyler's violence toward his wife. One time, Nikki came running out of the house screaming for help, her feet bleeding from stepping on broken glass. A neighbor who had helped her said that Nikki had noticeable abrasions on her face. Her lips were swollen and she had handprint marks around her neck. Another time she ran out of the house yelling for help as Tyler chased behind her with a wrench, yelling that he was going to behead her, and then even poured gas on her vehicle. This is just a couple of examples of the abuse that the neighbors had witnessed at the McCain home. What I don't understand is why Tyler was never arrested, even if Nikki didn't want to press charges. I mean, there were multiple calls and witnesses who saw the abuse, and Nikki had marks on her. It had gotten so bad that in January of 2022, the Tribal Social Services removed the 4 children from the McCain home. They were sent to live with Tyler's family, but Nikki's sisters fought and gained shared custody of the children, which was still the case at the time that Nikki went missing. But even after the children were removed, the abuse got worse and worse. Once Nikki started coming around her parents and siblings again after the pandemic slowed down, they could see a change in her personality, and they also noticed her having bruises more and more often. They were extremely concerned about her well-being. This is when Nikki started confiding in her sisters about the abuse she was enduring. They were shocked and had no idea at the time that Tyler was being abusive to Nikki, nor did they know about the police visits that had happened at the McCain home because of Tyler's violence. But like everyone knew Nikki to be, she had a huge heart and always wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt, including Tyler. She loved him and she thought she could turn him back into the man that she fell in love with. He is definitely a master manipulator. These people try to make their victims feel alone and make everyone else believe what the victim is saying is not true or that it is blown out of proportion. Nikki would send Chloe messages to relay to Nikki such as, quote, "Tell Nikki I love her and I hope to see her soon. Can you ask Nikki if she wants to go out of town with me for a few nights? Thanks, Chloe. If she doesn't want to go, the house will be free for her to get her things that she's needing in the meantime. I'm gonna come by. Thanks," end quote. This guy trying to play it off to the sister as if he is Mr. Reasonable and that Nikki had no reason for leaving him. He's disgusting. As we know, it usually takes a victim an average of 7 times of trying to get away from their abuser before they actually get away successfully. And that's if they don't get killed in the process. The most dangerous time is when the victim tells their abuser that they're done and they take the necessary steps to leave. Nikki had left Tyler several times in the past, and she would always go to her sister's or her parents' home to stay. Of course, Tyler would find her and sweet talk her, saying that things would change if she just gave him another chance. He said all the things, which are a bunch of bullshit. But Nikki was a victim of Tyler, and he had gaslit and coercive controlled her for so long, she believed the things he said to her. Her family, though, not so much. But they just wanted to see Nikki happy, and they would always be there for her when she needed, and when she finally decided that she was done. So Nikki always went back home, hoping things would get better. And it wasn't just Tyler who seemed to have a problem keeping his hands to himself. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because Nikki had told Chloe that Jeanette, Tyler's mother, had put her hands on Nikki also. Nikki chose not to press charges against her mother-in-law, though. She really loved her and made excuses saying that she didn't mean it and it was in the heat of the moment. And she didn't want to be the reason that someone got in trouble or went to jail, even if they may have deserved it. However, during one of the incidents between Jeanette and Nikki, Jeanette had no problem calling the police and filing a report against Nikki. This made it look bad for Nikki since she had chosen not to file a report against Jeanette or Tyler. It made it look like she was the aggressor. This made it look bad for Nikki since she had chosen not to file a report against Jeanette or Tyler. It made it look like she was the aggressor. Then, on November 29th of 2023, things went from bad to worse, and Nikki was almost killed by Tyler's horrific behavior. According to the probable cause affidavit, the incident that happened at the McCain residence happened between 8:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. that night. The police actually received a call on December 1st of 2023 and went to speak to Nikki, but at that time she was in the hospital being treated. Later that evening, the officer went to see her at her sister Chloe's home, where she was going to be staying indefinitely. The officer stated in his report that Nikki had noticeable facial trauma to her eyes and forehead, and both of her eyes were swollen and blackened severely, which appeared to be from a physical assault. According to Chloe, her sister was nearly unrecognizable. The officer taking the report asked Nikki who had done this to her, and she told him it was Tyler. She told him that they had been together and married for 16 years, and that they had 4 children together, but none of them currently resided with them. We already talked about the children being removed because of domestic violence. Here is what Nikki said happened that night. On Wednesday, November 29, 2023, Nikki returned to her and Tyler's home on Olinda Road at around 8:15 p.m. At that time, Tyler wasn't home. Nikki went into her bedroom and started combing her hair. At around 8:30 p.m., Tyler came home and seemed to be in a strange mood. For some reason, he went straight to the back door and locked it. Nikki said that Tyler seemed extremely agitated and wasn't making much sense. He then came into the bedroom, didn't say a word, and immediately jumped on Nikki, held her down on the floor, and started dragging her around the room. He started yelling at Nikki, asking her, "What's going on? What are you doing?" Nikki said that Tyler had a crazed, glazed look in his eyes, as if he was having some sort of episode. She tried to calm him down, but it didn't work. He continued to torment her both verbally and physically. He held her down and started to repeatedly hit her in the face with his open hand in a harsh, forceful manner, at least 10 to 15 times. In addition to hitting her in the face, eyes, and cheeks, he also pulled her hair. He then picked up a water jug and began pouring the freezing water onto Nikki. This torture by Nikki's husband, the man who was supposed to love and protect her, went on for approximately 3 hours. 3 hours not knowing if you're going to live or die. 3 hours of not knowing if you will see your children or your family that you love again. 3 hours of being scared shitless and not knowing what he's going to do next. During this 3-hour period, Tyler bound Nikki's ankles and wrists together with white tape. He also placed a piece of tape over her mouth so that she couldn't speak properly. He didn't have the tape covering her mouth completely, however, so she was able to breathe. After this, he rolled her onto her stomach, straddled her from behind, grabbed her hair, and forcefully pulled her head back. He then said he was going to kill her, and Nikki believed it this time. The officer asked Nikki what state of mind she was in while this was happening, and she said that she thought she was going to die, and that Tyler may have actually intended to kill her. Over the next few hours while Nikki laid on the floor, Tyler periodically hit her. At one point, Tyler even attempted to wrap something around Nikki's neck, but wasn't successful in doing so. When the officer asked her what kind of object Tyler had put around her neck, she said she was unsure because she didn't see it, only felt it. The officer made a note that there were no noticeable marks suggesting that she had been strangled or choked. I mean, she had just said he wasn't successful in getting it around her neck. But I digress. The officer did put in his report that there was significant damage to Nikki's eyes and that it was obvious that she had been struck over and over many times by another person. Nikki's tiny. She's only 5 feet tall and 95 pounds. She weighs less than my 10-year-old. It wouldn't take much to hurt her badly or even kill her. Tyler is much larger and stronger than Nikki, and there would be no way for her to fight him off. She was his punching bag, and he knew there was nothing she could do to stop him. Nikki told law enforcement that Tyler had done this type of thing before, but never to this extreme. When asked about Tyler's drug use, Nikki said she wasn't positive, but believed that he had used methamphetamine before. The officer asked Nikki how, at the end of the 3-hour ordeal, it all ended and how she got away. Nikki told him that at around 11:30 p.m., Tyler went into the kitchen and was in there for several minutes. Nikki knew this was the only chance she would have to escape. So she grabbed her robe, which had her keys in the pocket, and she ran outside and jumped in her car. As she was pulling out of the driveway, Tyler came running out of the house after her, and he jumped on the hood of her car, yelling at her to stop. But she didn't. She drove to her mother's home, where she stayed for a couple of days before going to Chloe's. That's when Chloe took one look at her and told her she had to report Tyler and go to the hospital. And Nikki knew she had to. She had really thought she was going to die that night. Nikki was advised to go to One Safe Place in Redding, which was an organization that helps domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims to get restraining orders filed. She was also given a Marcy card, which is a pamphlet about domestic violence. And then she was given a card by the officer that indicated the case number. Before Nikki left the hospital, she talked to a victim's advocate. This seemed to give Nikki the courage she needed to press charges against Tyler, which she did that very same day. After talking to Nikki and getting her account of the events of that evening, the deputies decided to go to the McCain house and have a little talk with Tyler. When they arrived, they found Tyler, who came out of the house and met them in the driveway. They told him he was being arrested for domestic violence injuries that Nikki sustained during a domestic violence incident. They put him in handcuffs and in the squad car, where they transferred him to the jail. Once at the jail, Tyler was read his Miranda rights. He stated that he understood his rights and was willing to talk to the detectives. Tyler was asked if he was aware of Nikki's injuries that she had on her face and body, and he said that he was aware of them, but he hadn't actually seen them. Tyler told investigators that he had last seen Nikki on the evening of the 29th at around 8 p.m. When he was asked if there was any kind of disturbance between them, he said no, there was not. Tyler told the detective that he believed that Nikki had gotten the injuries during a fight with another female. The detective then asked him if he had actually seen the fight take place, and he said no. Tyler's statements were inconsistent, and it sounded more like he was making excuses and seeing what would stick, because after he talked about her fighting with another female, he told the detective he believed his wife was having an affair with another female, even though he also said that their marriage was wonderful. They got along great and were a happy couple, never having any physical altercations between them. The detective asked Tyler one more time if he had seen this alleged fight with another female or Nikki's injuries, and he still was adamant that he hadn't. So that is when the detective informed Tyler that Nikki had reported him for being the person who caused the injuries, and that they had happened during a violent encounter at their home on the night of the 29th. Because Nikki's injuries were consistent with the domestic violence incident and the totality of the situation, the detective informed Tyler that he was being charged with 4 felonies: corporal injury to a spouse, along with false imprisonment by violence because Nikki had stated that Tyler had bound her legs and arms with tape, which prevented her from leaving the house, criminal threats because he had threatened to kill Nikki numerous times, and assault likely to cause great bodily injury. Tyler and also Nikki had given officers permission to enter the residence to retrieve Nikki's cell phone. While in the home and doing a safety sweep, they discovered 5 firearms in the bedroom area in plain view. Record checks confirmed that one of the firearms, an AK-47 type of rifle, was reported to be stolen out of Oregon. All the firearms were taken into safekeeping, and the AK-47 was entered into evidence as stolen property. This is all taken from the probable cause affidavit for Tyler's arrest and is important to Nikki's missing person case as it shows Tyler's abusive behavior, but it could also be the reason that Nikki went missing, as you will see. The charges against Tyler were serious, and he was facing a lengthy sentence if convicted. Nikki had finally gotten away from Tyler. She was staying with Chloe, and there was going to be a trial for what he had done to her. She was finally going to get her life back and work on getting back custody of her kids, and Tyler was going to pay for what he had done. But as we know with victims who are under coercive control of their abuser, it isn't always that simple. Nikki had been a victim of Tyler's manipulation for over a decade, and he wasn't going to let her go that easy. Tyler had a suspended license, and one day he called Nikki asking her for a ride to a court hearing for the charges that had been filed against him for what he had done to Nikki. And she said yes. How did he convince her to help him? We don't know what he said to her, but I'm sure he used his abusive and controlling techniques that he had used on her for over the years. Probably telling her it was her fault that he was in this position, and if she hadn't called the cops that night in November, he wouldn't need a ride to court. For whatever reason, Nikki agreed to give Tyler the ride. But instead of going to the courthouse, Tyler forced her to take him to his lawyer's office. And once there, Tyler and his lawyer started pressuring Nikki to drop the charges against Tyler. This case was set to go to trial on July 2nd of 2024, and Tyler knew he was facing prison time. So his only option was to get Nikki to drop the charges. But Nikki said no, she wasn't going to drop the charges. So Tyler drove off with her car, which according to what Nikki told her sisters, wasn't the first time that this had happened. I guess he was no longer worried about driving on that suspended license. Tyler wasn't done trying to get out of these charges, though. He had even told people he was going to pay Nikki off to get her to drop them. So once again, he was playing the victim and manipulating Nikki, eventually getting her to move back into the house with him by telling her if they were a family again, they would be able to get their kids back, which is what Nikki wanted more than anything. He had been abusing Nikki for a long time, and he knew the right things to say to get what he wanted, and he would use the kids if he had to. So in April of 2024, after staying at Chloe's for 5 months, Nikki moved back in with Tyler. However, she still refused to drop the charges. On May 7th of 2024, there was a preliminary hearing held in the case against Tyler, to which he pleaded not guilty. On that same day, Nikki had texted her sister and said she was done with him and wanted a divorce, which, as we know, is the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim. Chloe said Nikki was excited to restart her life. She was looking for furniture for a new place and was anticipating getting her kids back. Then, May 18th of 2024, Nikki disappeared. There has been no bank account activity, no social media activity, no text messages to anyone, and no one has seen her since that day. Her family had last seen her in person on May 12th of 2024, but got text messages from her in the early morning hours of May 18th. 2 weeks before Nikki vanished, Tyler had bought her a 2002 Chevy Avalanche during one of the times he was love bombing her. This truck was later found abandoned near the reservation on a street that led to the home of Tyler's cousin. The police are not releasing a lot of the details of the timeline, But Nikki's sisters have done some investigating of their own, and here's what they have come up with. On May 17th of 2024, Nikki had spent time with her mother-in-law, Jeanette Hayward. Jeanette's other son, Brian, had been admitted to the hospital into the ICU for an unknown reason. At some point, Nikki and Jeanette went to the hospital in Jeanette's car. Nikki had texted Chloe saying that they were there, and they kept in communication through text messages throughout the evening. Chloe isn't sure what time Nikki had actually left the hospital, though. At around midnight, so now it would be May 18th, Nikki, or at least it came from Nikki's phone, sent Chloe another text. She said she had Jeanette's car and was getting ready to drive it back to Jeanette's house. This was the last time Nikki's family heard from her. Her sisters aren't sure why she was returning the car to Jeanette that late at night. They don't know if she was at the hospital the whole time or had taken Jeanette's car and left Jeanette at the hospital earlier in the evening. At this point, they're just speculating. If Nikki had her cell phone on her, though, law enforcement could have easily tracked her movements, which I'm sure they have. But like I said, they're keeping a lot of information close to the vest, as not to harm the integrity of the investigation. The next morning, Chloe texted Nikki around 7 a.m. asking her how Brian was. She got no response. She texted again around an hour later, and then again 30 minutes later, still with no response. Later, Chloe was trying to find the soccer uniform of her niece, Nikki and Tyler's daughter, and thought maybe it was at Jeanette's because remember they were sharing custody of the kids at the time. Chloe's fiancé and the niece went to Jeanette's home to look for the uniform. When they got there, they mentioned Nikki being at the hospital the night before with Jeanette. Jeanette replied that Nikki hadn't been at the hospital at all. And when they asked where Tyler was, Jeanette said he had stayed overnight at the hospital with his brother. However, this story changes. In fact, Tyler changes his story at least 5 times. On May 19th, Tyler texted Chloe to ask if Nikki was with her. And on May 21st, the sisters realized that they hadn't heard from Nikki for a few days. She hadn't been responding to anyone's messages at all. Then later that same day, Tyler texted Chloe and asked if she had heard from Nikki and said that he thought she was missing. After this, Tyler tells very different versions of events to Nikki's family over the next few days. The first story was that he didn't stay all night at the hospital on the night of the 17th. He says that he got a ride home with his sister at around 1:30 in the morning and that Nikki was not at home when he got there. He said a friend named Justin, that they call Too Tall, lives in a trailer on him and Nikki's property. Tyler said that Too Tall went with him to pick Nikki up from his mom's house. He said when he got there, they got into a fight and she walked off. He says that was the last time he's seen her. The second story Tyler has told is that they were actually at their house when they got into the fight, and Nikki called an Uber, and once again, he never saw her again. Story number 3 is that he doesn't remember where the fight happened. Anytime Nikki and Tyler would get into a fight, Nikki would go to her mom's or her sister's house, and within a day or two, Tyler would be texting Chloe, telling her to tell Nikki a bunch of bullshit about how much he would change if she came home and how much he loved her. But this time, it was different. Nikki didn't go to her mom's or her sister's, and Tyler didn't send any of those kinds of messages. So what was different this time? Then Tyler's stories got even more unbelievable. His fourth story is that Nikki ran off with a woman she was having an affair with. Remember, he said she was also having an affair when he was telling the cop that he thought Nikki got into a fight with another woman. So that's the second time he's mentioned her having an affair with a woman. Tyler's fifth story is that Nikki ran off to Vegas with another man. Tyler, in my opinion, is a liar and an abusive piece of shit who knows exactly what happened to Nikki. And he should have just kept his mouth shut because he looked like a complete guilty dumbass at the press conference. Tyler's mommy, Jeanette, also has different versions of the events of that night. Jeanette said she can't remember anything that happened that night and just knows that she got her truck back that same night. Another story was that Nikki left her house in an Uber. But Tyler said that Nikki walked off from Jeanette's house. It was the story that they were at their own house where he says Nikki got an Uber. To me, it sounds like Jeanette is trying to cover for her baby boy, and they should have talked and got their story straight. Also, neither Jeanette, Tyler, nor Too Tall remember what Nikki was wearing that night. It's the last time you ever see your wife, your daughter-in-law, and your friend, but none of these idiots who were with her for a substantial time that night remember what the hell she was wearing, or what even happened for that matter. On May 22nd, 2024, Nikki's family filed a missing persons report with the Reading Police Station, and the case was transferred to the Shasta County Sheriff's Office Division of Major Crimes. Chloe and the sheriff went to Nikki and Tyler's home to do a welfare check on Nikki, but no one answered the door. Chloe was persistent, though, and requested another welfare check the very next day. And once again, no one answered. On May 24th, now the third day in a row, Chloe and the sheriff went once again to the McCain home, and this time, Tyler answered the door. He told them he had no idea where Nikki was, but that he did know that her truck, the 2002 Chevy Avalanche, was broken down on a bridge off Bowman Road in Tehama County. Chloe offered to go with Tyler to pick up Nikki's truck, but he told her that he and his buddy were going to go get it. Chloe called her sister Kay, and they went to look for Nikki's truck on their own. There were several bridges along Bowman Road, but the truck was nowhere to be seen. Chloe went back to Tyler and Nikki's home on the 25th to check in and to see if there had been any new updates, or to see how shady Tyler was being. He wasn't there, however. Justin was, though, so Chloe talked to him. She asked him if he had seen Nikki or her truck, and he said that on the night of the 17th, Tyler had asked him to pick Nikki up from Jeanette's after she had dropped off Jeanette's car. He said when he got to Jeanette's, he had something to eat, and they hung out for a little while before leaving. He drove Nikki home, and he doesn't know what happened after that. But remember, Jeanette said Nikki didn't even go to the hospital that night. So was she just at Jeanette's house, or is Jeanette lying? Also, Tyler had said that he and Justin went to pick up Nikki, but Justin said he went alone. If nothing nefarious has happened to Nikki, then why all the changing stories, and why is someone obviously lying? Also, Justin said that even though he hasn't seen Nikki after that night, he had seen Tyler driving her truck around. The truck that supposedly was broken down on a bridge that no one could find. But on the afternoon of the 25th, the Sheriff's Department put out a post about Nikki and her truck, and they found it later that day. But they didn't release the information to the public until May 30th. They had found the vehicle in western Tehama County. According to Nikki's family, the road that it was found on led to some property owned by Tyler's family, which we said earlier, it was a cousin of Tyler's. And it was an area that you wouldn't just go to without a reason. It's a road far off the beaten path, and it was surrounded by hills and rough terrain. And it wasn't on a bridge off Bowman Road, as Tyler had said. It was on Highway 36. No one knows at this point how the car got there, if it had been there the whole time or had been parked there later. However, if Justin is telling the truth about seeing Tyler driving the truck, then it would most likely have been parked there later. And how did Tyler know the truck was broke down there if Nikki had been the last one driving it, and then she disappeared? On May 27th, there was a large search party that looked for evidence in the area that the truck was found in, but authorities came up empty-handed. Several other searches have taken place, and Nikki's family has always participated. That is, everyone but Tyler and Jeanette. According to law enforcement, Nikki's last text put her in proximity of tribal land, which can cause some problems when it comes to searches of the properties that are on these tribal lands. The Rancheria Reservation is cooperating with law enforcement and has provided them with surveillance footage that was asked for and other information. They have also permitted local and warranted searches on tribal land. They have also clarified that under California's Public Law 280, which grants law enforcement criminal jurisdiction over tribal lands, they cannot permit searches on individual tribe members' private parcels without specific legal authorization such as a warrant. This causes a problem because of the stories being told by different people. The Rancheria are unsure where Nikki was last seen, so although some property on tribal lands may have been searched, they cannot search pieces that are privately owned by tribal members without individual warrants for each piece of land. And to get the search warrant for each piece of land, they would have to have probable cause to search each piece of land. And that is hard to obtain without having evidence to justify it or have a reason to believe that there may be significant evidence on a certain piece of property. Someone knew exactly what they were doing, which is why Nikki has not been found yet. And Tyler and his mommy are prominent members of the tribe, so they could have used their leverage to get these private lands searched, if they wanted to. But it seems they are using their leverage in the opposite way. Tyler has not participated in any of the searches for Nikki and has not even spoken out to the media until 10 months after Nikki disappeared. If you even want to call that complete awkwardness speaking out. It was worse than Chris Watts' porch interview. And what about the charges against Tyler that were heading to trial in July? Well, on June 3rd, 2023, another preliminary hearing was set to be held, and the trial was scheduled to start July 2nd. Tyler was being charged with the 4 felony charges of corporal injury, false imprisonment, criminal threats, and assault with force likely to cause great bodily injury. But on July 5th, the Shasta County District's Attorney's Office requested that the charges be dropped, and the Superior Court granted the dismissal. They have all been dismissed without prejudice, meaning if new evidence comes up or Nikki reappears within a 2-year period, the charges could be refiled. Nikki's absence made prosecuting Tyler impossible because as a key witness, her testimony was essential to Tyler's constitutional right to confront witnesses. This would have risked a not guilty verdict without her statements. So, Tyler got his way. He couldn't talk Nikki out of dropping the charges, so she disappeared before the trial began. I don't believe that this is a coincidence, and I don't believe anyone else does either, as while Tyler was in court, a rally was being held outside with over 200 of Nikki's family and friends. They held signs demanding justice for Nikki and making people aware of the dangers of domestic violence. Everyone was infuriated that the charges had been dropped. When Tyler came out of the courthouse, Chloe and Kay confronted the piece of shit and asked him where their sister was. His response to this grieving family of a missing person was to flip them off and shrug his shoulders. What an asshole. On July 2nd, a fire occurred near Tyler's cousin's property. It burned 19 acres of land. This property was scheduled to be searched next, and the search was canceled because of the fire. How convenient. Then, the very next day, on July 3rd of 2024, a fire broke out at the home of Nikki and Tyler. The home wasn't damaged, but 98 acres were burned along with cars that were on the property. Tyler admitted to starting the fire, but said it was by accident. He said he had parked his car on dry grass, and because of the catalytic converter being faulty, the grass caught on fire. He was given a citation. So then we get to the press conference held on March 10th of 2025 that Nikki's family had requested to keep her case in the public eye. I'm going to read you part of an article published by MSN that describes Tyler's coming out into the public eye that day. Quote, McCain took the time to thank the work the Shasta County Sheriff's Office has done so far and asked for help from the public. McCain seemed to struggle with what to say, speaking so quietly he could only be heard by the people and microphones right next to him. "We miss you," he stated softly. "I don't really know what to say." He then went on to apologize for his reticence to be in the public eye, saying he struggled since her disappearance. "I apologize to everyone, especially my children, my wife's family, mine as well," he trailed off. "I'm just here in support, so anything that I can do, I want to do that." Okay, why now? Why do you finally want to do something after almost 10 months and your story has changed 5 times? He really seemed that he wanted to be anywhere but there. He probably thought after 10 months everyone was just going to forget about Nikki, but that definitely is not the case. That was his final statement before passing off the microphone to Nikki's sisters, Chloe and Kay. The pair went over the facts of the case, pleading for help from the public. They celebrated Nikki's 40th birthday on November 9th without her there. They also talked about a new webpage that they have released that will provide information about Nikki's case. The website is where-is-nikki.com. Efforts to aid in her safe return have been ongoing. On June 3rd, the Redding Rancheria erected a billboard along I-5, offering a reward for information. The reward was initially $10,000, but has since been raised to $30,000 with contributions from USPA Nationwide Security and their nonprofit Kingsman. And this was all we knew until just this past Friday, on March 14th of 2025. Nikki's missing persons case was unfortunately changed to a homicide investigation. Law enforcement is still not saying much, but they did say that based on evidence and interviews, detectives believe that someone killed Nikki. They have executed several search warrants throughout the case and have several persons of interest in what they believe to be the homicide. Hopefully this is one step closer to finding her and also one step closer to getting justice for Nikki McCain. If anyone has seen anything on the night of May 17th, 2024, has heard anything, or may have any information that may help solve Nikki's case, please contact the Shasta County Sheriff's Department Major Crimes Unit at 530-245-6135 or email at mcu@shastcounty.gov. You can also contact the Redding Rancheria Reward Line, also called the NorCal Alliance for the Missing, at 530-638-3855. I will post other information about Nikki's case on the Victim's Voice Facebook page. Let's help Nikki's family get the word out to bring her home. For photos from this case, check out the Victim's Voice Facebook page and come back next week for a new case. Until then, peace out.